Hey guys, Austin here again with another Q&A video. A very, very long overdue one, which seems to be the norm for my Q&A videos. And actually, really, any kind of video this year. 2024 has not been the best to me. Now, I've not been the best to 2024 either, so, you know, it's mutual. But yeah, a lot of these questions I got for this video is, I think that most of them came in like January or February or something like that. And here we are in mid to late November, finally sitting down to record this. A couple caveats here. I'm actually using a different microphone for this one. I am at my mom's house right now. She's out of town, and so I've opted to help her kitties while she's gone. So I'm coming over to scoop their boxes and make sure they're fed and give them some attention and stuff like that. As much as I love my own kitties and my own home, it's much smaller, and so it's kind of nice coming over here and kind of doing a video where I almost first started. I started YouTube in 2009. 2 months after I started my channel, I moved back in with my parents for 3 years. And so a lot of my early videos were actually done where I'm recording right now, which is just kind of crazy to think about. And then the last 12 years have been in my own apartment. So it's kind of weird coming back here recording a video where it mostly started. So anyway, yeah, different microphone. So quality is going to be a little bit different than what you're probably used to. Whew, getting a little teary-eyed here. Sitting here at 1:15 a.m. Pure silence, just myself and 2 sleepy kitties. But for any of you guys that haven't watched one of these Q&A videos before, these are more podcast style videos. I actually have a specific podcast section for them, I think, on my YouTube channel. So I kind of treat them like podcasts. I don't publish them like podcasts, but it's the same kind of thing. I'm going to have some gameplay in the background going, just so if you're looking at the screen, you have something to look at. But you could turn away from that and you could walk around, do stuff around the house, get cleaned up. Maybe pop me on while you're driving to work or something like that. It's that kind of video. You don't need to see anything. We actually, I did fish for questions a couple weeks ago. I didn't get any new ones. I mainly request for these Q&As on my Discord server. There's a private channel backer only section. So in that channel backer section, I will ask people if they want to submit topics for discussion. Also on Patreon and my YouTube channel memberships, I will post there, but I didn't get any new responses. So most of these are from earlier this year. If you submitted and you're no longer a channel backer, that's fine. I'm still using the questions that you submitted. So thank you guys for participating as always. And yeah, this looks like a pretty short roster today. I think I'm looking over the questions and thinking of answers, and I think this is going to be a pretty short one. Of course, I always say that, then they end up being like an hour long, so we will see. Anyway, starting off with our first question, it comes from Jason Scott, aka Game Dude, over on Twitch. He asks, what are your opinions on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and would you do them? So I don't really have a lot of opinions on these. I don't really watch them. I prefer not necessarily longer form content. I like videos at least 10 or 15 minutes long, with some meat to them, something to take away when I'm done watching, and something that's entertaining as well. And I don't really get that from shorts or TikToks. Not really a huge fan of watching them personally. Also, I feel that not just TikTok videos and YouTube Shorts, but there's also like Facebook and Instagram Reels and stuff like that. Very short form content. I feel it's easy to get addicted to that kind of content and not really remember any of it, because you're watching one video, it's done in under a minute, and then it automatically goes and plays another video, and then another video, and then another video. It could be all sorts of different topics. You're bouncing back and forth between, and I think it's kind of like brain dead content. Not a big fan myself. I understand why people do it, and I've seen some really good ones too. But it's a lot of it's lazy content too, and I feel like after I've watched a handful, I just feel like dumbed my brain down farther than it already was. Anyway, part of his question, though, was, would you do them? And the answer is yes, I did. Actually, last year, I uploaded 3 shorts to my channel here. I feel like I put a lot of effort into them, and I packed a lot of information into them, so I felt like they had value. But I noticed that my YouTube stats were going down kind of hard. And I think the viewership on my shorts, which was good, I had like over 40,000 views on one of my shorts and like another 12,000 on another one and a couple thousand on another. And that's like really good viewership for me personally. Usually when I post a full playthrough or a live stream archive, anywhere from 400 to 1,500 views, and then it caps off and that's it. So it's like, you know, getting 40,000 views on something that I'm passionate about is very satisfying. But because of the high views on those, it was actually like lowering my overall watch time, so, and viewer retention rates. So shorts at the time could only be 60 seconds or less. Now I think you can do 3 minutes, but still. So what was happening is people were watching 30 to 60 seconds of it. All those views were averaging into my overall stats. So overall, like viewer engagement and watch time dropped because of the success of the shorts. As a result, my overall viewership dropped, new subscribers dropped big time, and then I realized like this was going to be a problem if I kept pursuing them. And so I deleted them. I got rid of them from my main YouTube channel. I uploaded them to a spare YouTube channel. It's called Gameplay and Talk Shorts, and it's got the same G logo except it is magenta. So if any of you guys want to check that out, I'd actually be grateful if you went and subscribed to that channel. I'll have a link in the description box here. I haven't done a brand new short since I made my last one, which I think was the Sega Dreamcast. So I did a short on the 32X, the Sega Saturn, and then the Sega Dreamcast. I thought they were really high quality. I enjoyed making them, and I would like to make more, but on the channel I broke them off to, it's got like no subscribers and no views. I think the highest short I have there is like 100 views. It's pretty pathetic. So I went from 40,000 to 100. Pretty demoralizing, but that's YouTube for you. Anyway, yeah, I probably won't do any more unless like I see some more viewership from that channel. Actually, one thing I did consider doing is doing a similar type of video, same kind of setup, but maybe do like multiple consoles back to back, and then I could have it be just like a normal 10-minute video or something like that. But I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of myself with that. Anyway, Game Dude, and aka Jason Scott, he actually has a second question. He says, also, what is a good tip for making YouTube videos? I guess I'm in a proper position to comment on this, and I'm pretty sure we've touched on this previously, but what is a good tip for making YouTube videos? I mean, really, there's a lot of good tips, really. There are a lot of rules you should be following when you make content on YouTube. Ultimately, I think having a passion for what you're talking about is probably the most important. It's very easy to get into like the rat race mentality where you're just grinding stuff out and you're not really feeling it. You're just going for views and stuff like that. Ultimately, you want to be excited about what you're talking about. Like myself, I'm not really that excited about this stuff anymore. I've been doing it for so long, it's just kind of like I just do it, and it's actually probably why I haven't been putting out as much content this year, because I haven't been feeling it, and I don't want to really force myself to do stuff. And I'm still occasionally forcing myself to stream, but you know, sometimes it's good to just stream a little bit and get it off my chest. But yeah, passion for it, excitement, and also a bunch of other smaller things that I've kind of noticed over the years. You know, I've been watching YouTube videos since around 2006, 2007. So we're nearing on 20 years of me watching stuff on YouTube, and I've been making stuff for the last 15. 15 this past October, actually. So we're in November. Last month was my 15-year anniversary, and I didn't do a video on it. You want to do content that isn't all that commonly seen. I get a lot of new channel recommendations on my homepage, which is really cool to see. There are a lot of brand new creators, even in just the retro gaming space, but a lot of them are doing the same type of content that I've seen time and time again over the last 15 years. It's just not exciting anymore. You've got to do something different. Your top 5 best NES games is not all that interesting anymore. And, you know, clickbait titles still gets to me. Overly dramatic, overly emotional titles and thumbnails grinds my gears. I guess it's technically a way to succeed, quote unquote, but it always feels very hollow when I see these things. And yeah, I mean, just content that hasn't been done 1,000 times. Actually, when I got into YouTube, a lot of you guys probably don't know, but I really wanted to cover stuff that you didn't see talked about very often. Atari Jaguar was one. That was a huge catalyst for me starting my YouTube channel, because there was barely any coverage of it on YouTube, and there's still barely any coverage of it today, which is why I'm kind of trying to be focusing on some Jaguar live streams and Let's Plays and stuff like that in the coming future. But Yeah, Jaguar, 3DO, 32X, Sega CD, stuff like that. Trying to do something unique is actually hard on YouTube these days. I'm sure if you dig, there's still plenty of stuff you could do. Yeah, so that would be a tip of mine, is try to find something more unique and don't just make generic throwaway content that anybody can shove out. Production quality is a huge one. It's not hard to make tight looking videos. I'd like to say my videos look tight. They're clean. There's not a lot of like flair and stuff like that, but it gets the job done. And same with my live streams. My live streams, I think, are pretty crisp and sharp, and there's not a lot of just goofy stuff popping up left and right. And it's not hard to do that either. It's just like, it's very simple. But there's a lot of people I stumble upon on YouTube that are using like really bad webcams. It's like, dude, if your webcam sucks, don't use it. Don't have a face cam. Wait until you can save up and buy a decent camera. Or if you have a decent camera, turn that autofocus off. That's a really simple thing. So being aware of your production value overall, like how does your microphone sound? Are you popping into it? Do you need a pop filter? Do you need to, when you're producing your audio, do you need to add a noise filter to get rid of like the fan in your background? That's really important. You need to think about stuff like that. In the early days when I was doing YouTube videos, like I lived in a bedroom that had a window unit fan, and it was loud as hell. And during the summer, I would have to turn it off and sweat my balls off on a video just to not have that fan noise in the background. And that's a sacrifice you have to make when you're doing stuff like this. Yeah, so being attentive to your production quality. It's actually really simple stuff. It's easy to abide by. It's easy to not make mistakes if you're attentive. So being attentive to your overall production quality and choices is very important. Like actually on this table I'm recording right now, so I'm recording on my mom's dining room table, and she has this Lazy Susan, which is like, one of those things that you can spin around, like, hey, please pass the chips or pass the dip, and someone will spin it over to you. And she's got this big candy bowl from Halloween filled with candy, and it doesn't sit on the Lazy Susan just right. So every time I would touch the table, the thing would rattle back and forth, and I was like, the mic's definitely going to pick that up. And so I grabbed it and I put it on the floor. So, it's being attentive like that. I'm intentionally trying to not touch the kitchen table or dining room table right now either, because you guys will probably hear it. Or the thing that it's on, it'll probably pick that up. So it's things like that. For some people, it takes time to get used to thinking about things like that, but I never found it terribly difficult. So just making sure your stuff is sharp and presentable, and it's something that like you would want to be listening to or watching as an individual. So anyway, I'm sure I could come up with a lot of other tips for making YouTube videos, but ultimately have the passion. This YouTube's been around for so long now. So many people have come and gone. Competition's very stiff, and so just kind of have the passion, do something that you really want to do, and do something that not a million other people have done as well, and then just be very cognizant of your production quality. It's not hard to have something that looks and sounds good. People, I think it's a lot harder than it actually is. It's actually really easy. Thanks, Jason, for that. That was actually kind of good to talk about. I haven't talked about just like the back end of YouTube for a while. All right, so the next question is from Andy Author, 2007, and he asks, what is your opinion on the Stellar Blade censorship controversy? Ooh, controversy. I really don't care. Although I think he asked this question when the game first came out, and that was a long time ago now, so anyway, I was originally just going to say something really snarky and just move on to the next question, because this sounds like high school level stuff. Like, I'm in my 40s now. I don't care anymore. This is more important things in life than gaming drama. But I decided to look into it real quick, just out of curiosity. And it sounds like what happened was Stellar Blade, which is like a modern 3D action game for the PlayStation 5, and now I think it's actually been announced for PC. So what happened is, in trailers, they were showing off character costumes that had like they were a little more risque, not like offensively so, but you know, they showed more skin. The primary character, I think, is female. There was also a lot more gore and stuff like that, like blood. The violence level was higher, apparently. And then when the game dropped, the devs didn't tell anybody, but they ended up cleaning some of that up. They lowered the amount of gore. They tightened up the characters' costumes so there was less skin shown and stuff like that. And it's just all whatever to me. But you know how teens and 20-somethings with too much time in their hands will just take it the wrong way and just kind of forget that there's a really good game underneath all that. And that's it. That's what I got out of it. I actually read a lot of responses on like Twitter and Reddit, and that's kind of what it sums up to. It's just like people were presented with one thing, they got something slightly altered in the end, which, I mean, that happens all the time, and it's happened a lot over the years in various forms of media, not just video games, but movies. Remember, there's a bunch of movies now that I'm thinking about it. They'll show scenes in the trailer, and then you go and you watch the full thing, the scenes aren't actually there. It's like, what? Anyway, yeah, I mean, that's the controversy, quote unquote. I guess we can all move on with our lives now. Actually, I need to play Stellar Blade. My brother's roommate actually has that game. So I should probably borrow that from him. Maybe do like a blind stream, because it actually looks like a really good action game, and I haven't played a modern 3D action game in forever. Not counting Elden Ring and the Demon Souls remaster, because I don't know, those are just different. This looks more something like, it would be more like a Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden or something like that. So yeah, it looks pretty sweet. All right, so next topic comes from Scott Linux. He says, what are your top or recommended Nintendo Entertainment System shoot-em-ups, aka shmups? I think I've actually done this one on a previous Q&A, but I'll do it again. NES has, you know, it's funny, we actually did an NES live stream a couple weeks back now, and I think I played a couple of shmups. I'd say my top shmups for the NES would be, this is just personally speaking. There's a lot of people that aren't going to like these. Silver Surfer is one of them. I played that game a lot growing up, and I've never stopped playing it, and it's just got a banging soundtrack, and visuals are pleasing to look at, and I think the game's pretty fun once you learn the level layouts and get powered up. You just rip through stuff, and it's very satisfying. A lot of different locations you go to in that game as well. Like, no level is really the same in that game, and that game, honestly, to me, it doesn't get enough credit. You know, a lot of people really like to tear that one apart, and it's kind of a bummer. Some of my online friends here, if you guys are listening, please post a comment and back me up here, but they've been getting into it, and for some of them, it's like one of their new favorites on the system as well. So I think it's a good game. It's definitely one of my top ones. Another one is Life Force, just classic Life Force. You can't go wrong with that. Yeah, Life Force on the NES is just one of the best in the system. Dragon Spirit, really fun game. Yeah, very fun shooter for the NES, and a very good beginner shooter as well. That's one of those, like, you could just recommend to anybody. For higher level players, it's, you know, not as entertaining, but the production value on the game itself, like the music, the graphics, and stuff like that, makes it worth playing. And for beginners, it's, you know, it eases you in, which is nice. There's a new one I played recently, which is a homebrew, and I'm going to do a Let's Play on it. I'll probably actually be practicing it here, because I brought my AVS with me to my mom's house, you know, to hook up and play before I go to bed, and it's called Astro Ninja Man, and it's a homebrew from 2019, and it's about as close as you get to like a bullet hell on NES. It's pretty sweet, actually. Not too complicated, but it's very impressive visually, and the soundtrack kicks ass. Yeah, so I'm going to be looking forward to showing that one off. A lot of other cool shooters on NES. I mean, Abadox is a personal favorite. You've got top-down stages, you've got side-scrolling stages. I have a bunch of Let's Plays of it here on my channel, so if you want to check that out, just go search for it on the YouTube search box on my channel page. Yeah, it's by Natsume. There's another one we played on stream a couple weeks ago called Scat. Yeah, very cool game as well. There's a lot of other ones that are pretty sweet. Burai Fighter is a unique one. Yeah, there's a lot of other ones that are worth mentioning. I mean, Xanac is kind of a classic. I never really got into Xanac. I just don't jive with those early compile shoot-em-ups. Honestly, I didn't really like compile's games until like Musha, which was around Musha Alesta. That's around 1990 or so. And then their games since have been kind of like, you know, iffy. Like one I'll really like, another I just won't like that much, so on and so forth. So, or some of them I'll be lukewarm on, like Space Mega Force or Robo Elesto on Mega CD, Sega CD. Others will say like 1943. I think 1943, for about 80% of it, I think is really damn good. And then the last like 25% sucks, because the difficulty just shoots through the roof. It's insanely frustrating to actually finish that game. But in the first 75, 80% of it, where it's pretty manageable, it's a really well-made game. Very fun, great music, great graphics, tight gameplay. Japanese Gradius 2. Didn't see a release in North America, unfortunately, on the NES, but definitely pretty good. Definitely would recommend that. Twin Cobra, if you want some Toa Plan jank on the NES. I mean, it's only jank because it's a Micronics conversion of a great arcade game. But it's still pretty fun, especially if you have like an Advantage joystick on NES. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other NES shmups are there that I would name. I know I'm just drawing blanks because I'm doing this all off the top of my head. So, but yeah, those are my top or recommended NES shmups. Alright, so Scott also asks, I'm curious to know any recommendations and methods you might have for cleaning cartridge pins. Yeah, I'd say these days, Scott, cleaning cartridge pins, you're best off just doing isopropyl alcohol with like Q-tips or something like that, cotton swabs. You can do it just as is. You don't, you just take the cotton swabs, dab it in some alcohol, and then, rub away. And then take some dry ones and then dry it off. That definitely works. It's very safe for the pins because alcohol just completely evaporates, basically. And so it doesn't damage anything. You can also take the cartridge apart, which will make it easier, but I don't do that unless like the cart is really being bad. Like I had I think it was Mega Man 5. I paid a lot of money for that actually. A couple of years ago, it was being really fickle, so I actually ended up taking the cartridge apart so I can get at the pins a little bit easier. But that's really all you need. You just need cotton swabs with rubbing alcohol, preferably a higher level of rubbing alcohol. I think, you can get anywhere from like 50 to 70%, all the way up to like 90 or 94% or something like that. And that's what I would do. I would use like the 90 something if you could find it. There's other methods. Back in the day, people would use pencil erasers. I never actually did that. I always just did the rubbing alcohol. Well, I did use a technique that is these days apparently very frowned upon, but I would use extremely fine grit sandpaper, and it worked wonders. That was actually my favorite way of doing it. It felt like it was the most reliable, but everyone says these days that you'll damage your pins by doing that. I never had an issue, and I did probably thousands of cartridges that way. But I don't do it that way anymore. I just do rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs. Although usually the rubbing alcohol and cotton swabs is really good. Metal polish is one I've heard is a big no-no as well. I've never done anything with metal polish on my cartridge pins. People mention Brasso. I've never even used Brasso, period. My parents never had Brasso in our house. When you start getting into polishers, or if you start doing something like sandpaper, and I'm talking super fine, I never use any super like high grit or anything like that. It's always extremely fine. When you start to get really physical like that, you can actually end up shaving off some of the plastic on the inside of the cartridge, or leaving marks. So what we would do, we used to do like very fine sandpaper wrapped around a popsicle stick. But as you're rubbing back and forth, like you're leaving a line in the back of the plastic where the popsicle stick is touching. And so it's like, I don't really care that much if I have, marks on the inside of a cartridge where no one's going to be looking. But still, some people are extremely picky about the condition of their stuff. And, so that's not really great. And I'd imagine if you're doing like a metal polisher, you run a risk of causing some other unintended damage. But yeah, at the end of the day, Scott, rubbing alcohol with cotton swabs is the way to go. Now, there's other different types. You don't have to just use cotton swabs. You can get creative and have like a little plastic tab that has like some kind of felt thing wrapped around it, and that would kind of do the same thing. I like cotton swabs because like I'll take two together and I'll go back and forth pretty hard, and I'll flip the sides and go on the other side of the pins, and then flip the cotton swabs around and do the dry end, do the same thing, and then I just throw them away. It's just I have a trash can nearby, and yeah, that's how I do it. Any of you guys out there listening, if you have any tips or if you have any methods of your own for cleaning cartridge pins, definitely let me know. And actually, I have a question for all of you guys out there: is how do you clean cartridge port pins? Not the carts themselves, but the actual cartridge port itself. I know with the Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo had cleaning kits, and I guess I think they probably had them for Super Nintendo as well, where it was kind of like a felt end of a cartridge that you would dab with alcohol and then you pop it in and out of the cartridge slot. Is that what you guys do, or do you guys have any other methods for that? Because it feels like for a lot of the cartridge ports I look at, it's actually really hard to get to the pins to clean them. So I'm actually really interested about that. I do have a couple consoles that are a little fickle that I'd like to try to clean the console pins. All right, this next question I'm going to do because it's going to be a little bit shorter, but this is from Don GEX. Longtime viewer. He says, what are your opinions on the Assault Suit series of games? They were released in America as Target Earth on the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, and Cybernator on the Super Nintendo. He was wondering if I have ever played those notoriously difficult games. So I actually, Don, I don't have a lot of experience with the Assault Suits games. I've played both those games you're talking about, Target Earth, which is the first one, and then Cybernator comes farther down in the series. I did dabble with Cybernator back in the day, but I never made it more than like a level or two in. I've always wanted to go back to Cybernator because it felt like it was a little more like straightforward actiony. Target Earth, it always felt like you were out in an open environment and it was mission oriented and it seemed pretty cool. Actually, I think I fired it up earlier this year on Twitch and I played a couple levels in and I was digging it, but yeah, I never really put much time into it. I did play, I think it's Assault Suit Lanos 2, or is it just Assault Suit Lanos on the Sega Saturn? I fired that up earlier this year and I was like, whoa, this is really impressive. But there was so much Japanese, it was kind of like hard to go through, but very impressive game. There was also the Assault Suit, I think it's Assault Suit Lanos for PlayStation 4. Yeah, I think I picked that up a couple years ago. Played it for a couple levels. It seemed pretty cool. But yeah, it's just a series that I guess hasn't grabbed me enough to where like I've wanted to go back and really try to sink a lot of time into it. But some of the old ones, like apparently Target Earth doesn't take that long to get through if you know what you're doing. So I might try to focus on that. Cybernator seems very similar in terms of like length. Cybernator would probably be the one I would try because it's so colorful and it was published by Konami in North America, and you know that was like Konami's best era for me personally. That's my experience with the series. I don't have a ton of it, so I haven't actually seen its mean difficulty because I've never made it more than a couple levels in. Not because like I was having a hard time with them, I got bored and moved on. I was like, all right, let's play something else, guys. So, but yeah, let me know what your guys' opinions are on the Assault Suit games. Alright guys, so we have one last topic of discussion today. It comes from Tom Loonsberry. He asks, do you think the retro category on Twitch and YouTube is oversaturated at this point? And if so, do you think the fad has run its course? If the fad has indeed run its course, do you think prices will just regulate, or do you think we're in for another crash of 83? So that's there's a lot to that question, that topic. There's two angles to it. There's is just the general Twitch and YouTube community kind of oversaturated when it comes to retro gaming content, and do you think that retro gaming content has kind of run its course? And then there's the other half, which is there's people collecting video games and they buy video games and prices are at an all-time sky high. I think they've probably come down a teensy tiny bit since COVID, but some things haven't come down at all. Some have actually skyrocketed higher. A lot of people feel that a lot of that is from exposure on Twitch and YouTube. That's been a problem for a very long time. I saw it, I was on the ground in 2009 doing this, and so I've seen the prices and how they've gone up over the years. I've always suspected that a lot of it was because of exposure on platforms like YouTube and now Twitch. Will we crash like 83? Well, the crash was only really in North America. No, that was a totally different type of thing. That was video games definitely were treated more like a fad back then in the mainstream, and so people just kind of lost interest and stopped buying at the same levels that they were previously. to an extent to where like a lot of companies just went out of business because of it. Are you going to have that happen now with retro games? No, I don't think so. It's actually kind of ironic because I remember when I started getting into flashcards, I was like, oh man, if everyone just like goes to flashcards, they're just going to want to sell all their games. Like, why have all this stuff taking up shelf space? I can just get money for all this. But the opposite's actually happened. People are buying flashcards in like finding games they really love, and then they just go out and buy them. I'm like, wow, that's driving prices up because demand goes up and prices go up as a result. And where retro game prices are these days is completely beyond what I thought it would ever be. I mean, there's just definitely a newfound interest in it. I mean, even some big box retail stores for a little while there had a retro category in their video game section with like Sonic the Hedgehog and Zelda and Mario trinkets and stuff like that. Little mini clone consoles and whatever. It's definitely, yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a much bigger interest now than there was 15 years ago when, you know, I started making content here. But as far as the content itself, completely separate from retro video game prices, is retro content itself oversaturated on both Twitch and YouTube? I would say absolutely. It's been oversaturated for a very long time now. It's very difficult for anyone to really stand out. You know, even when there's a new channel I stumble upon, I look at their content, I think, okay, this is really polished stuff. The guy speaks well. You know, the information seems all right. It's whatever, but it's like, I've seen it before, and so I don't subscribe to his channel. I don't spread the word that this guy exists. I've just like been there, done that, and I don't really need more of that. I do find on Twitch in particular, there's the retro category, which isn't all the retro streamers, because Twitch has all these game subdivisions. Like, you can categorize yourself under Legend of Zelda or Castlevania or Ninja Gaiden or the original Raiden. It depends on how you decide to categorize yourself. Usually when I do old school stuff on Twitch, which is most of the time, unless it's Doom or Doom 2, I put myself underneath the retro category. It's very difficult to get discovered when you're under that category, because there are, you know, when I started streaming on Twitch, the retro category might have had like 20 to 50 people streaming, and now you look at it, I swear sometimes it's like upwards of 1,000. What's happening on Twitch in particular, I'm not sure about YouTube, because my perspective on YouTube is very skewed because I've been doing it for so long, and when I started streaming on YouTube, I was lucky to already have a little bit of a following, and so my live streams on YouTube generally, even right from the very beginning, had decent viewership by my standards, and an amazing viewership compared to my Twitch standards. My Twitch standards are like, I might get 5 to 10 people watching. On YouTube, I'll get anywhere from 20 to 70 people watching at once. A lot of times we'll get like 40 to 50, and then it'll taper down to like 30, and it'll hover around that for the rest of the stream, but that's still way better than like 5 or 10 on Twitch. And so one thing I've noticed on Twitch though, if you're gonna do, say, put yourself in the retro category, I think it's a lot harder to find a following over there now. I think what's happening is, yeah, it's oversaturated, but I think also the viewers, I think, are flocking more to larger channels. You look at like Mike Matei, you look at Macaw, you know, their viewerships are at all-time highs. Whereas a lot of other channels that have been doing it for a long time over there are at all-time lows. To a point where like some people are bailing out, they stop streaming, they don't do it anymore. I think just a lot of people are moving to very specific channels and just kind of staying with that. They enjoy the communities, they enjoy the personalities, they enjoy the games they play. You know, it is what it is. I don't know if it's a sign of like a decline, because some of these channels, they have pretty large viewership for retro games. It's just, I think the viewership has just kind of like funneled into those larger channels, much more well-established channels that have a schedule, and, you know, in this case, for some people like Macaw, like, he must be doing that full time. He's streaming all the time when I am on Twitch. It's like, if he's not doing that full time with the amount of subs he has and the viewership, then I don't know how he finds the time and energy, but that's another story or another topic for another day. Yeah, I don't, on the YouTube side of things, like, YouTube's been oversaturated for so long. You should have seen even like 2009, 2010. So many people were just jumping into it and making content. I do think content types are oversaturated on both platforms. Well, Twitch is one thing, but YouTube, you know, it's not just streaming on YouTube. It's, you can make dedicated videos that can take a lot of effort and work, and you know, make an impact on one's viewing experience. But kind of like I mentioned in one of the earlier topics, is there is a lot of stuff that's just been done to death and back on YouTube, and it's just, I get a lot of recommended channels on my home feed, and it's so much of the same stuff I've seen time and time again, and it's just yet another take on the same thing, and it doesn't really do anything for me. It always grinds my gears too when it's like it's also a bad take from someone that's clearly like pretty inexperienced. I know I probably have some bad takes to a lot of you guys out there, but I've at least really tried with a lot of these games. I've really been around and like sunk my teeth in, and anything I haven't really sunken my teeth into, I try not to get too emotional about it, because I don't have the experience, and I'm just not going to really talk about it. Or if someone asks me about it, I'm going to tell them this is what I gleaned from my handful of minutes with said game or topic, and I can't really say anything more than that. I just leave it in like a gray area, and that's how I just tend to look at things now. But there's a lot of new creators out there that's like, this game's the worst game ever made, blah, this game's unplayable. It's like thinking to myself, no, that's BS, because I totally just played through it 2 nights ago. So you're either trying to clickbait me into clicking on your video, or you just have a really bad take, or you're comparing something from 30 years ago to something that's modern. I don't even know where I'm going with this. There have been a lot of like clickbait videos recently saying how like some old school games are just completely unplayable, and it's like, no, you just need to adapt and change your line of thinking and get better as a player. But maybe that's a topic for another day. So anyway, Tom did mention fad multiple times. Has the fad run its course? I don't think it's a fad. If it was a fad, some of us wouldn't be here 15 years later still talking about this stuff. And I think there's still a lot of people out there that haven't really rediscovered classic video games, and I think we're going to continue to see people getting into the content creation space. We're going to continue to see people getting into the viewing space. So like myself, I'll probably have new people come into my streams. Had a couple of new people coming to my streams this year, and they've stuck around. So for those of you guys listening, thank you. A couple of those two that didn't stick around, I think I ruffled their feathers. They asked me one too many dumb questions and got the real Austin, which isn't always nice. You either learn and leave, or you learn and stay, and you've learned. We've all learned, and yeah. I'm a human being. I'm difficult. I don't put on a face for you guys. I try not to put on a face for the most part. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would call it a fad, personally. No, while I've personally had lack of motivation recently, I know retro video games will always be a big part of my life, because there's just not that many other things I really like as much as retro video games. And with anything hobby related that I do, I go through phases, and I'm at a point where like I've been back in it for so long, you know, the retro video game thing is it's losing its luster. It's just not exciting anymore. But lots of other people are coming in, they're realizing they want to stay in it too, and they don't want to dip out. You know, some people will go too. Some people will realize, like some of the people on stream recently have realized they just want to downsize all their stuff and just have like a Mr. FPGA or an analog pocket and with a dock, and that's their way to play all the retro stuff. But they don't need to have a full room filled with cartridges and discs and memorabilia and stuff like that. But they'll still likely have interest in watching content. Makes them feel warm and fuzzy. It sometimes, especially if you're working a job where you can actually, like you're in an IT job or something, you can watch YouTube while you work. Like sometimes you just have one of those days where you're dealing with people, everything's going the wrong way, but then you pop up the latest release from like My Life in Gaming or something, and like it just makes you feel good. It puts you in like that right state of mind that you want. So yeah, I feel like for the time being, there will always be like that interest in this stuff. I wonder how the retro scene is going to change over the years. Like Xbox 360 is getting close to 20 years old now. That's insane. Like that's basically retro at this point, even though a lot of its games don't look retro. But I do tell people, you know, you can take a lot of those games, just render them at a higher resolution, and they still look really good. So it'll be interesting to see when people start going back to like that generation, or even like PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube. You know, you don't see as much content about those platforms, but I think that's probably going to change, you know. In 2009, 2010, it was all 8-bit, 16-bit. That was most of it, really. Yeah, I guess PlayStation, Saturn as well, 32-bit, but there was like next to nothing on PS2 and Xbox as far as like retro games are concerned. Now they're, you know, basically all considered retro. It'll be interesting to see if that becomes a much greater focus as the kids that grew up with those consoles now become the content creators, reminiscing about the good old days. Kind of like myself, I've been reminiscing for so long about the 8 and 16-bit era, 32-bit era. And it'll be interesting to see which of those creators dive into some of the older stuff and try to keep that alive. Or that was a big non-answer now that I think about it. That was a packed question. So, but anyway, yeah, guys, that is actually our last topic. So I don't want to meander too much longer, but I really appreciate you guys listening. If you made it to this point, in the video, please post a comment down below and let me know. Because I like to know who actually kind of listened through the whole thing. And if you have any responses to any of the topics presented, post a comment down below and give me your thoughts. And again, on the cartridge and console cleaning thing, like I would definitely like your tips if you have any. So, but thanks everybody for submitting questions. I really hope the audio here wasn't too bad. I won't know until I get this back to my home computer and put it through like my filters and stuff like that, compressors and whatnot. I did a quick test before doing this. It seemed like it was fine. It's a cheap like $30 or $40 Razer microphone, but I wanted something small and portable I could just kind of take anywhere with me. That would still sound decent after, you know, I had put some filters on it and whatnot. But yeah, guys, thanks for listening or watching if you're one of the few that were actually glued to the screen. And I'll try to have some more videos out sometime soon along with live streams and whatever. And probably try to do a channel update video as well, because this year has kind of sucked. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for watching and listening, and have yourselves a great day or night wherever you are out there in the world. And until the next one, take it easy.